Hey guys, LC Holt here, and this is my weekly update for November the 19th. And today we're going to continue sort of the theme of last week's discussion. We were talking about the heady theme of cults, and there's Zach Myers. How you doing, Zach?
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. I was just introducing ourselves to the audience and saying what we're going to do this week. Cults we covered last week. This week, keeping on the high points of our discussions, we're going to talk about serial killers because that's the kind of thing me and Zach talk about when we're not live broadcasting to everybody. And
That's what we do with our time. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we're going to go today. And good down the dark road of serial killers. And we're not talking about serial killers like the kind I play in a movie, the fictitious kind. We're talking about the real deal. People like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy and Richard Ramirez. I mean, Richard Ramirez was a guy that had like a fan club. People wrote him letters and stuff while he was in prison. Um,
Yeah, and that's actually it's pretty common and based off of a lot of that. I always wanted because I'm a huge fan of serial killers, being a huge horror fan and stuff, and I'm I'm intrigued in a just the inner mind of a serial killer just fascinates me, and like a lot of people, and I decided, I wanted to write to a serial killer. It was kind of an experiment of mine. I wanted to see if one would actually write back to me. And I wrote to a lot of famous serial killers that were still alive, um, which people should know if you ever decide to write to a serial killer. Some are not allowed letters because of their arrogance or whatnot. They're not allowed letters for that reason. Or they're not maybe for other reasons. And then some of them were just rejected because the serial killer, the guy didn't want to write back. But one wrote back. Ohio serial killer Sean Great, which he was recently caught probably a couple years ago, or maybe a little over a year ago, something like that. And the letters behind me here are actually the letters that he wrote to me, and
ah.
you can see his signature right there. Your friend Sean Great.
And what I mean, okay, so you wrote him a letter and just said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Or well, I mean, what was it?
Basically, I I wrote to him just kind of asking him, that I was fascinated by him, and I just I wanted to know who he was as a person, and I and believe it or not, I think he just wanted to talk to somebody. And he wrote back, and like obviously, and he kind of told me a little bit about his childhood and his upbringing and stuff. Now, let me tell everyone a little bit about Sean Gray. When he killed at least 5 women. Um, they know that there's more. I should say six because they linked a sixth woman. But when they arrested him, he was living in an abandoned house, and he had a woman upstairs in a closet decaying. When he had another woman downstairs in the basement decaying, and he
Now, wait,
kidnapped him.
wait, you said to Kane?
Decaying, yeah, they were down there for quite some time.
Oh, decaying. I thought you meant like to cane them, like hit them with a
Oh no,
stick.
no, no, decaying. And he kidnapped another woman, and he she, I guess, would have been probably like the seventh, I guess you would say. But he was keeping her alive, he was using like a cattle prod and tasing her and stuff and doing some really horrible things, which I just think is awful. But he fell asleep, which I don't know how he fell asleep. And she took that as the opportunity to use his phone and call police. And police got there, they arrested him. She was saved. She was okay. Um, and he just recently was sentenced to death. So he's on death row now. So he will be executed.
So did she testify against him, the victim that survived?
Yes, yes, she did. She and they actually went through several photos in the court talking about uh, showing, what was in these closets and stuff, these bodies and stuff, and he couldn't really deny any of it. And then on top of that, like I said, the woman, she ran out of the house, and she had marks on her from the cattle prod. The cattle prod was in the house, so yeah, it was all he was pretty screwed, and
Well,
but
that's very brave of her, not only to escape when she had the opportunity, because obviously she would have ended up like the others, but to
yeah.
testify against her. I mean against him. That takes a certain amount of bravery because could you imagine facing the person that held you and did all those awful things to you and because he's in the courtroom, you know?
Yeah, I noticed that I watched the court hearing. I mean, obviously, I felt like after getting letters from him and stuff. Um, but yeah, he kind of just kept his head down the whole time. He looked pretty ashamed. But kind of back to the letter, the last letter is pretty much just him asking me for money, you know, and and I understand he needs money for whatever, like cigarettes or coffee or whatever you need in prison. You just need to not get beat up, I guess. You just need some money to I guess to do whatever. And I just I don't know. I was fascinated on a level, like an educational level of wanting to talk to him, but I didn't want to support him and in that sense, like, oh, I'm gonna give you money, you tortured a lot of innocent women, which isn't right, and I don't condone that. So, I wasn't gonna send him money, and he stopped writing back. So that's fine. I've tried since to write a couple more serial killers, but I've only been fortunate with one. And this is the second letter, which is a lot longer.
So he sent you two letters?
He sent me two letters in total. I sent him, I guess, two letters in total. And the first letter is basically just introducing himself to me and stuff. Now it's funny. He talks like the way you would kind of think a serial killer would talk. Um, he would go ahead and say stuff like, "Go ahead and ask me anything you want. Questions never killed anyone." And and besides killed, he would also say, instead of saying um, nobody, he would say nobody.
Oh, he
Like,
would separate it into two words.
yeah, and he would say stuff that was really, it kind of fascinated me, but to the average person, they might be really unset by that. I received this letter, the first letter, on March 25th, 2017. That's and this was before his court hearing. And the second letter was him a little bit more talking to me about his family, about him detached from his father. He wrote, which is kind of cut off in the frame, but on the very top, he wrote, "God bless and Happy Easter." And because I got this letter on April 12th, 2017. And he had a sign company, which he made signs for small businesses. And I think I complimented him on a couple of the signs that he made, which were quite actually good. And he wrote on the side of the letter, like, promoting his, like, great signs or whatever. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting thing.
So
And,
what serial killers would not accept or weren't allowed to have letters that you know about?
well, ones that aren't allowed, for people out there, they probably don't know. There is Keith Hunter Jesperson, which they call him the Happy Face Killer. He is not allowed letters. Super arrogant. Who else?
Let's see, Dennis Rader is not allowed letters, is he?
Yeah. Or actually, yes, that's correct. He's the other one. They were they were very like gave me an attitude like why would I even want to talk to that scumbag? And they were real like and anyone who wants to write a letter to a serial killer and you want to like talk to the prison first. I mean that's probably a great idea in my opinion because you want to waste your letter just sending it to some prison that's going to send it right back. And
No,
you want to know
Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, he wasn't allowed them, was he?
yes, he is allowed them. Good luck. He rejected mine. That's not to say he would reject yours, but yeah, he rejected mine. But he is allowed.
Oh, so he's allowed to have them, but he just said no.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So he doesn't want to have correspondence with people.
No, and it could be one of those things. A lot of people got to take this into account. Prisoners, like serial killers, they're in there for life. They're lonely. Unless this typical serial killer is, gay and you're a male, he might want to talk to you because they're lonely. In my case, the guy just wanted money. He saw it as an opportunity to, I can get money out of this guy. But and if you're a female, be careful because most serial killers, they won't talk to you unless maybe you are a female. So that's how that works.
Well, that's the thing too about people like Richard Ramirez, where he would write back to people. He would have correspondence with people, but he really, whether you were male or female, but he really liked, girls, obviously, and he would ask them things like to send pictures of themselves. And like even with the guys, he would ask the guys like, "What's your girlfriend look like? Can you send me a picture of your girlfriend?"
I
And
heard
I'm
one
like,
he asked a guy for a lock of his girlfriend's hair, and I was like, "Wow, man, good luck with that."
yeah. Like, have you ever thought about some of the female groupies that would send Ramirez stuff, and you go, that if he was outside, he would murder you, right? Like,
It's really funny. Like I think that about Ted Bundy all the time, and all these women are like, "Oh, Ted Bundy," and it's like he would hit you in the back of the head and put you in his trunk, and take you to the woods.
yeah,
That's not to be so blunt, but that's exactly what he would do. And speaking of Ted Bundy, um, I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about the new film.
yes, yes. The new movie, which I first heard about, I think you might have mentioned it to me at one point, and it stars Zac Efron as Ted Bundy. Now, that sounded to me not so great. And then I started seeing pictures from it, and I heard who else was in it and the quality level of the movie. And I was thinking, this might be kind of interesting because the pictures I've seen of Zac Efron as Ted Bundy are pretty good. I mean, that he
It
kind
was
of
the
looks, yeah, he looks like Ted Bundy.
I'm not the biggest Efron fan. I'm gonna be really, really honest. I'm not trying to bash the guy or anything, but I just not a fan. But I saw the photos of him and I thought they were so amazing. Now,
Yeah.
being such a serial killer fan, I've watched quite a bit of films based about Ted Bundy. And for those out there who don't know, you got a movie that's based off a book about a woman who actually knew him, was friends with him. Her name was Anne Rule, and it's called The Stranger Beside Me.
Oh
That's
yeah, yeah. And she's a
super.
very famous author, I should say, now.
Yeah, and she passed away like I think like 3 or 4 years ago, I think. But she um, there's that movie. Then there's the Deliberate Stranger, and then there's a movie called Bundy, which is great. It's made by Fangoria.
Yeah,
Um,
there are a lot of movies like that were based around serial killers. Some of which weren't very good, some were. But we should say that this new one, the Zac Efron one, has a very unusual title. That's the one thing I'm kind of iffy about because the title is extremely wicked, shockingly evil, and vile.
yeah, I couldn't remember that if you paid me.
I have it written down actually. I was looking at it because I was like, there's no way I could remember that. You know what it reminded me of when I first heard it? It reminded me of that 9/11 movie, Extremely Loud and Incredibly
Yeah.
Close. Do you know what I'm talking about? I was like,
Yeah.
my brain was like trying to figure out, wait, is that 9/11 movie? And then, oh no, it's the Ted Bundy thing.
The new movie is based off of Ted Bundy's ex-girlfriend, which knew him quite well, and she wrote a book about him, and you know all the crazy crap he did and stuff. So
Oh, so is it based on her book?
yeah,
That's kind of the part that really interested me because when I found out it was going to be more about their relationship, which was very odd. And I mean, we could kind of go into it a little bit. He met this girl, and her name was Kofler. Is that right?
I think so. That sounds about right. I have always have a hard time remembering her name, but I think that's it.
And she married. Yeah, he wanted to marry her, and they were very close. She kind of came from a nice family. He was, a good-looking guy, and he had ambitions, but he wasn't, you know, uh, didn't have a high standing in life, and so she
Yeah.
sort of broke it off with him. And then
Well, and
he,
other little things too. Like, I mean, obviously, like you were just saying, he had no ambitions really. He didn't really. He kind of had a drinking problem, a little bit of a drug problem, and he didn't want to kind of. He didn't really want to, commit to anything, and he also talked to himself a lot, and she caught him quite a bit, and I think that really bothered her because what do you do when you find your loved one and talking to themselves in the bathroom? It's not something that you typically.
and I wonder what he was saying. Was he like, "I'm going to cut your head off. I'm going to cut your head off right now." I mean,
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It sounded, from what I've heard, it sounded like he was rehearsing how he would talk to people, which I think is very odd.
oh, I see. So he was like rehearsing how to be a normal guy.
Yeah, like,
Hmm.
hi, I'm Ted. I'm Ted. Stuff like that. Pretty weird.
Interesting. Yeah, that would kind of freak me out. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I buy that. Well, yeah, and then she broke it off with him, right? And then he went off to law school and he tried to kind of make himself politically more astute and everything. And then the whole idea was that he was going to get back with her and then dump her, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then when she broke it off with him, he left. Oh, actually, I always get it confused. He might have broke it off with her. I
The first
think,
time?
yeah, because I think he finally got her to want to marry him, and then when she finally wanted to, he bailed. And I think that's what makes a lot of people confused because they're like, I don't get it.
Mhm.
You finally got what you wanted, right? I mean, the woman that you supposedly love wants to marry you now. Well, not
Well,
Ted, but
I thought, well, kind of the way I took it was he was that was a sign of domination over her. Like, oh, you want me now? Well, I don't want you. Sort of
that's true.
revenge, you know. Uh,
And that makes a lot of sense for his kind of character.
yeah,
He
it's narcissistic and very,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
And
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, and one thing that I wanted, because we were talking about the topic of serial killer films, and I have this thing I wanted to kind of promote, and you can get it on Amazon, eBay, a lot of websites online, and it's a steel tin, and it comes with 3 serial killer films in it, and it comes with Ed Gein, Gacy, and Dahmer.
Hmm. Ed,
And like I said, steel case comes with 3 movies, and have you ever seen Ed Gein?
well, which one is this? There's been a couple. Who's
Oh
it?
yeah, that's true. That's true. This isn't the one with Kane Hodder, that's for sure. This is the Steve Relsack is Ed Gein in this one,
Yes, I have seen that one. Yeah.
and he does a good job. I will admit that. He does a good job portraying portraying him. His mother, the woman who plays his mother in it's very very mean. She does a really good job. I recommend Ed Gein for any horror fan.
Yeah, Ed Gein he was an interesting guy. And think of all the movies he's inspired, from Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Psycho. I mean, it just even elements of The Silence of the Lambs. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, Ed Gein. They say that he might have murdered his own brother for the affection of his mother.
yeah, they were out hunting, and it was like supposed to be an accidental hunting accident or something. And I think a fire broke down, and his brother got trapped and killed in it. But it was all because of Ed, and he tried to become his mother's favorite after that because he would think, oh, and my brother's gone, so I could be the favorite. Well, then the mother just mourned her son. She still didn't care about Ed, and I think that really really bothered him. And once his mom finally died, he couldn't take it anymore. I don't think he was able to be alone.
So do you think that he killed his brother?
Oh
And
yeah, I really do. Um, I also heard one thing that he used to say, like because when he was arrested, he was actually taken to a mental hospital. He was so crazy that they instantly were like, he's not
yeah,
sane.
yeah. I mean, because when the cops came into the house, they bumped into the body of a shopkeeper upside down and gutted like a deer, dressed like
Hmm.
a deer.
And he would go and dig corpses up because he lived near a cemetery. So he would go and dig corpses up, and that's where they got the idea for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to decorate the house in, bowls and forks and all chairs and stuff because he had all that stuff in his home that would
Yeah,
made a human
because
man.
Ed Gein really did make lampshades out of flesh, and he had a bowl made out of somebody's skull. I mean, that was real.
Made a woman's suit, like a real woman's suit that he actually wore, which is kind of what they got, the Silence of the Lambs, and that's he's really fascinating. It's when you hear all these stories and then you see them, and he's like this really frail old man, and you're like, what? I don't get it. But I mean, he's like a real life ghoul, so
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
super fascinating.
Well, that's a classic example of a ghoul there. And when they came into his house, he was living in squalor, and this was in Wisconsin, right?
Yes, yes, Plainfield, Wisconsin.
And I mean, he didn't have heat because can you imagine what that house must have been frozen in the winter? And all the house was in squalor except for his mother's room. And you go into his mother's room, and it's exactly the way that she left it when she died.
He
Uh,
couldn't cope with that. He couldn't cope with that at all, and he claims that his mother told him to kill the shopkeeper.
oh, that she was talking to him in his head.
Yeah, and so I think that's another. It was dead giveaway that he was insane.
So was the female bodysuit, was that to be a woman, or was that to be his mother?
That's I guess up for speculation. I think he wanted to be a woman on some level. I mean, that's just me.
Mhm.
But I could be wrong. Maybe he wanted to be like his mom. He did have kind of a weird relationship, which they based Norman Bates off of. So it's
Yeah.
that
What
could
a
go either way.
what a guy, but he was one of the earlier versions of an American serial killer, probably one of the earliest, before you had guys like, Gacy, who you mentioned there. Who plays which Gacy movie is that?
Oh, this is the one with Mark Holton, which plays a phenomenal Gacy in this, and it has a great cast. It's not a lot of people know about it. I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, I've never seen it. And there again, there's been so many movies based off of John Wayne Gacy. And To Catch a Killer. Um, they got so many great ones, but this one I really recommend, and it's fairly accurate.
Mm. Yeah, he killed an awful lot of people. He killed a lot more people than Ed Gein. Gacy.
Oh yeah. I think it was 36 or
Yeah.
37 young men and boys, and he would dress up as Pogo the Clown and stuff. For those who don't know that, and they do talk about that briefly in the film, which, like I said, I do recommend. And then, like I said, then you got Dahmer, which is probably my personal favorite on this entire set.
Now, is that the one with Jeremy Renner?
Of course,
Very
um,
good movie. That's a very, very good movie. I was
it's
surprised at how good it was. When I watched it, I was thinking, "Oh God, this is going to be another one of those serial killer movies where they like do murder sequences of like a horror film, you know." But then I watched it, and I was like, "Wow, this is a real movie." Yeah, really well
yeah.
made.
Oh yeah, it's great. I love it. I think he did such an amazing job. Now there are flaws in it. Honestly, they made a there was a movie which I cannot remember the name of the actor who played in them, but it was called the Secret Life, Jeffrey Dahmer, and that is probably the most accurate movie I've ever seen about him. I don't think the average person can handle a really accurate movie about him because he was pretty brutal. But this movie really, I feel like a lot of the films go into one different part of his life. Like this particular focuses a lot on him struggling with his homosexuality. He really he struggled with that, and kind of shows him how he met his first victim, and all that
Well,
stuff.
like Gacy, he liked male victims. But he was sort of, I mean, if you think about it, him and Gacy had some similar ways of getting people. I mean, obviously their MOs were different. Jeffrey Dahmer liked to eat people. Ultimately, he liked to eat people, and Gacy was, I think, more sexually aroused by the idea of trapping people. But we were talking about before how they would sort of lure people over. In the case of Gacy, he owned a contracting business, and he would hire these young guys to do like building, to build stuff for him,
Yeah,
and then kind of invite him over to the house and give him a beer and say, "Hey, you want to see my handcuff trick?"
yeah,
And because he was sort of a magician, amateur magician, Gacy.
yeah. He knew a few tricks. He knew a few tricks that he would show people, and of course, he'd offer them, booze and pot, and he would sit there, and want to party with them and stuff. And that was kind of you know, so
Yeah, yeah, that was a very interesting. He was a really sick individual, and Gacy was the one that did the crawl space, the bodies down there, which he hit them down there, and just tons of people, tons of. You said what, 36 or something?
yes, not all in his crawl space.
Right, but there were a lot down there.
Oh, most of them.
Oh, geez, man, can you imagine the smell?
That was the neighbors complained quite a bit.
And a few times people kind of got away. It was sort of like what we were talking about earlier, how the guy, sort of how the girl got out of the closet, and that's actually how Dahmer eventually got captured. Is that a guy got away, uh, and that's a lucky fella, a very.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I can't, and I find that very odd that every once in a while a serial killer feels like he doesn't want to take that person and he just lets them go. And in most cases, it doesn't happen that way. But I've heard a few serial killers who've done that. Dahmer, I mean, sorry, yeah, Dahmer has done it a few times. I think when he first started out killing people, he wasn't very good.
And the worst thing about Dahmer too is there was that one victim who almost got away but didn't. The little kid, I mean, he was like 13 years old, and he got out of the house or out of the apartment, Dahmer's apartment, and actually got the police. And Dahmer saw him and said, "Oh, that's my friend, and he's drunk." and he was really drugged and naked walking the streets. And the
The
police took him
only
back. The police took him back to Dahmer's apartment and left him there, and Dahmer murdered him.
only serial killer in the history of the world to ever get a victim back from the police.
Yes, the cops actually took the kid back, and I don't know who those cops were, but I certainly hope that they got fired.
Oh, they did. They did during the whole court hearing and stuff because there was recordings of them making jokes about, because there was gay pictures of Dahmer with, and the guy, and it made the cops uncomfortable, I guess. So they were making jokes about it, and there was recording that was also taken into an account. Since we're on the subject of Jeffrey Dahmer, this would also give me another time to recommend another movie, My Friend Dahmer. I recommend this movie for anyone who is a Jeffrey Dahmer fan. It talks all about more into him when he was really, growing up and going, in high school, and him struggling with his parents' relationship and them fighting all the time. And um, it's Ross Lynch plays Dahmer, and he does an amazing job.
Now, I haven't seen that one, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. That's based on Dahmer's friend's graphic novel, right? That he wrote and drew.
Yes, yes, it was. And I read the graphic novel. It's very interesting.
And is it pretty close to the graphic novel, the movie?
Exactly, exactly. There's even parts in the movie, and I was like, whoa! I remember like seeing that in the book.
And
So
so the movie is like about this kid's friend with his teenage friend Jeffrey Dahmer, who eventually became the serial killer. But this is more about when he was younger, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't want to give any spoilers, but he doesn't kill anybody in the movie. So for anyone who wants to watch it thinking that he's going to kill someone or eat someone, no. It's about him struggling up until that point. Um, and he everything that he went through, collecting roadkill, doing really just bizarre stuff. As he, before he actually started doing that, putting dead animals, in jars of acid and stuff like that.
Because the thing about Dahmer is he first killed somebody when he was like 16 or 17, right? And then stopped for years and never didn't kill again till he was what, 10 years later or something?
Yeah, I think he was actually 18, I believe. He might have been 18, because I think he graduated from high school.
And he was living alone at his house because his parents divorced and his mother just moved out, and his father had moved out since the divorce, and
Pretty much, yeah.
his dad didn't realize that he was at home alone, and his mother just left him there. So he was just sitting around drinking, and then this murder happened, sort of an impromptu murder, not something he was intending really to do.
His fantasy was to pick up a hitchhiker.
Yeah, and
He
then so he saw this hitchhiker and he picked him up and took him back, but I don't think he was intending to murder him, right? That just kind of
No,
happened.
no, no. He wanted to spend time with the guy, and the
And then
guy kept saying, "I got to get back to my girlfriend." That really kind of seemed to really bother Jeffrey, and the guy wanted to leave. Now Jeff had a real problem with people leaving him. Everybody that was ever close to him, he feels like in his life, left him. So he really didn't want this guy to leave. He, on some level, he begged this guy not to leave.
and this
And
guy's probably sitting there going, "Oh God, what have I got myself into?"
yeah, pretty much. Like I just wanted to come and drink a couple beers, lift some weights or something. Like I don't know why you're making me want to stay. Like what the hell? And but that's the way Jeff was. And the guy tried to leave, and he hit him in the back of the head with a weight
Yeah, barbell, right?
barbell. Yes.
Mm. And so he just killed the dude, and then well, if you think about the abandonment thing, and you think about the situation he was in, now that's not to justify doing anything like that, but you can kind of look at it and go, he had just been abandoned by his mother and the father, sort of, even though the father didn't intentionally do it, he just wasn't around because of the divorce. So, and then this guy's going to leave, and this is sort of his fantasy guy, I guess. So, one abandonment too many.
Yeah, and I believe the guy's name is Stephen Hicks. I
Yeah, that's
watched
right. Yeah, I remember reading that. Yeah, it was Stephen Hicks, and Stephen Hicks got Yeah, he was really the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong guy, and wound up getting
Yeah, I didn't
dismembered.
deserve that.
No, definitely not. And for years, they just thought he was a runaway because Jeffrey got away with it. He broke up the body and spread the fragments of bones in the backyard, and nobody knew that this had happened. In fact, we'll go back to the cunning police work. The famous story is that he actually cut up the pieces of this fellow, put them in trash bags, and was taking them to the city dump and, at the middle of the night. And a cop stopped him and said, "What are you doing out?" And you'd been drinking. And then Jeffrey Dahmer says, "Oh, I'm having a lot of trouble at home. I'm just taking this trash to the dump." And the
Yeah.
cop sympathized with him and said, "Well, you just need to go home," and let him go. And the cop, there was a dead body in right there in the back seat of the car, and the cop lets him go. I mean, Jeffrey got lucky with the police a lot.
Yeah, well, no. And that's because simply he looked and acted normal, which most do. That's why they get away with it. For the average person thinks it's a serial killer is going to have a scar or an eye patch or something. They're going to look deranged. Most serial killers look like you and me.
Yeah,
Um,
you got somebody like Ted Bundy, very good looking guy and just totally clean cut.
yeah, and Jeffrey Dahmer, he looked very innocent, very, very, very innocent. The average person would not think that he um, he would he wouldn't harm a fly, but on the other hand, he was very, very, very crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Man.
Oh, and then the last film that I wanted to recommend for everyone out there was a movie called The Freeway Killer.
And who is that based on?
William Bonin, The Freeway Killer. And it is a great, 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 great movie. Um, I believe it is Cole Williams plays William Bonin, and he does an amazing job.
Now, I'm not familiar with William Bonnet. What was his story?
He would drive down the highway in his van, and he would pick up young hitchhiking men, and he would basically force himself on them and then kill them, and then get rid of them. And he did it for quite some time. I think he did it for a total of a little over 2 years. But the amount of guys he did was like amazing. Like he did, it was nearly between 8 and 12.
Well, that's the thing about hitchhiking is the same thing with like sex workers. People can just leave home, run away, whatever, and disappear. And because of either their profession or because they chose to leave, they're maybe not reported missing for a long time. And
Yeah.
that's a great opportunity for a serial killer. If there's somebody crazy out there wanting to do something awful to you and you're on the side of the road, you know, it's dangerous.
Yeah. No, and that's why they target them, obviously, and it's just sad. And they're obviously there's to a serial killer, they're just disposable.
So the moral of this story, Zach, is don't hitchhike.
Yeah, totally.
But also the moral of the story is you need to stop selling yourself on the streets. Give it up.
Give it up. You got to give that up. Don't hitchhike while you're doing that either. That's just asking for trouble.
Because how many people did Ridgway kill? The Green River killer kill all prostitutes, and he killed
Hundreds.
Yeah, there's like hundreds of them. Jeez.
And for those little fun fact, little serial killer fact for everyone out there, Ted Bundy was the first person to get the term serial killer. Before him, that term never existed.
Is that right?
Yep.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. And they don't know how many people he killed, right?
When they asked him, they said, "You killed 36 people. How can you do that?" And he laughed and said, "Add a digit."
360.
But I mean, who knows? Really, add a digit to that. I mean, they took that as, was that 37 or 136? Like they don't really know what that. They don't know from that. But he killed quite a bit. So.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. Ted Bundy, that's a hell of a story. That's a guy that was in prison, escaped prison, went on the run, got captured again. And some of these guys have the best luck. Like the serial killers that are the most professional or the most prolific. Professional. God, that's probably a terrible thing to say. But the most prolific are usually the ones that have the best luck. They're in these situations like Dahmer was. The cop lets him go. The cop brings the victim back to the house. Or you got somebody like, you know, Bundy who can talk his way out of just about anything, and he's escaping prison through ceiling tiles easily, and it's just
Oh man, I don't know how he slipped through a ceiling tile, like just whoop, right through, man. I don't know how he did it.
yeah. And I remember, wasn't there two instances? Because it was one where he was in
He
a
jumped out of a library window. He jumped out of a two-story window,
yeah. Because
and that takes some balls to do that. That's all I gotta say.
I remember seeing an interview where he was talking about when he was in the library and he saw the window and he was just like, well, it just kind of struck me. I could get out of that. So he just went, he just
Well, the guard left him alone because the guard wanted to smoke a cigarette. So the guard left and left him alone. And he was like, "Window, yes. I don't care how high up I am. I'm jumping out that bitch."
The one thing though, he was in Colorado, and when he went up those hills and got into the snow, it was the thing that was like, oh God, I didn't realize how cold it was in Colorado.
Oh yeah.
And it's not like he had any snow gear or anything, so he didn't stay long on that one. But when he slipped out of the ceiling tile and out of the jail, he actually was gone for a long time. He went to a whole other state and was
Uh-huh.
had another job down there and another name. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty scary. And he came through my home state, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he came through Alabama on his way to Florida when he escaped from through the ceiling tile and was free for that long period, relatively long period. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I don't know how long. I don't think he stayed here very long. But then he went down to what was it, Jacksonville, Florida?
Yes.
And then that's ultimately where he got caught. And in Florida is where he got sentenced and then executed.
Yep. Yep. And Ted Bundy is also the first serial killer to kill two separate people in the same day and grab them from the same location.
Oh yeah, that's from that park, right? What was it, July
It was a
4th?
beach. I thought it was a beach, but it could have been a park.
Yes, you're right. No, it was like a lakeside.
Yeah, okay, yes, that's what it was. It was like a lakeside, and he grabbed a girl, drug her somewhere, killed her, went back, met another girl at the same area while people were around looking for the other girl. Grabbed this girl. I mean, he really just was. It was pure arrogance. He just, I'm not going to get caught. I'm smarter than you are, and it paid off for a little while for him, but
Yeah, you can't get away with it forever. Even a lucky serial killer's luck runs out eventually,
eventually.
and it did. And he got fried, man.
He died with a smile on his face, which creeps a lot of people out. Ted Bundy, when he was electrocuted, was smiling.
Hmm. What a guy.
What a guy!
Well,
He
on that note,
was a lady killer.
he was what?
He was a real lady killer.
Oh man, yeah, he was. There's an interview that he did, and this will be kind of start to wrap it up. But I wanted to mention this because it popped into my head. There was some cops that came down, and they sort of did the Hannibal Lecter thing before there was Hannibal Lecter, where they were trying to get his advice on actually the Green River killer,
Yes, that's
Ridgway.
true.
They were saying, Ridgway was out there murdering all the prostitutes and no one could find him. And so the cops were like, well, maybe we should go and talk to an actual serial killer. Maybe they could give us some insight. And so they went and they talked to Ted Bundy and asked, well, what do you think, being a serial killer, this guy's doing and thinking, and what would he do next? And trying to get inside the mind of a serial killer. And, and he talked to them, but there was one thing that he said, and I think during the same time they were trying to get pieces of information about victims that Ted Bundy had murdered who hadn't been found. And there was one piece of the tape, and it's an audio you can listen to on YouTube, of them talking to Ted Bundy. And he's kind of skirting around this one victim, and he doesn't want to talk about it really, but he's sort of giving little hints. Because I think Ted Bundy's the whole MO at that point was, I'll just give them a little bit and a little bit, and maybe they won't execute me. Like, they'll keep staying because I can give you more details. And he was, but that kind of ran out eventually. And they,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, we're going to kill you one way. You're being executed, whether you give us any more or not. But there was one instance where he was talking about a girl, and he's talking to the cops about the road that you would find her on. And then there's a part where he's trying to be quiet, and he leans into the microphone, and he says in this whole different voice, whispering, and then I took her and I put her head in this, and then I buried her head. And you go, Jesus Christ, like my blood ran cold, man. I was listening to that and I was just thinking, God, that's what a lunatic sounds like. Terrifying. If you look up on Facebook, or not Facebook, if you look on YouTube and you find that audio, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's really fucking terrifying when his voice changes and he starts whispering into the microphone, and then he goes back to his normal self, and you start to think, oh God, was this the kind of thing the women heard in their last moments? That
Yeah,
voice?
I think that's just about it.
Yeah. Well, on that up note, I think we'll start wrapping this discussion up. A good discussion about serial killers.
It was great. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we'll maybe do something else where we go into some of this stuff in more detail about different people and different movies, Dahmer and all these guys, Bundy and Gacy. But this was a good general discussion about serial killers, and I hope you guys enjoyed it and didn't get too bummed out by the dark subject matter. And Zach, thanks for sharing with us your letter and that story.
Thank you for having me on again, and thanks for everyone for listening. And it was kind of just a chance to share my experience, my conversation with a real serial killer with everyone. So thanks for listening, and thanks everyone.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, man. And as for you guys watching, thanks for watching. And I will see you next week. Until then, take care of yourselves and watch out for serial killers.